I want to welcome everybody to the program this evening. We have the honor and the privilege of welcoming Rabbi Meni Steinsaltz to Valley Beth Shalom. Before I read his biography, I just want to explain Meni's father, Rabbi Steinsaltz, changed my life in so many ways. The rabbi that married my wife and I, Chabad rabbi in Chicago, said, when you get to Jerusalem and you live there for a year studying in the rabbinical school, do me a favor, go to this one learning that happens in Jerusalem. Go to this one learning. And I went on the first Thursday night that I was there, and then I became a regular on Thursday nights. And I used to go up to Rav Steinsaltz after every...
I do remember him.
After every lesson, I'd go to Rav Steinsaltz, I'd say, I'd like to bring my wife and my kids to meet you, to have an audience. Is that possible? And he'd say, sure, before you leave. Just let me know when you're leaving. And then March came, and I said, I think we're going to leave in like 8 weeks. So he says, let me know when you're leaving like a few weeks away. I said, 3 weeks from now, we're leaving 3 weeks from tomorrow. He says, great. Tell me with 1 week to go. So the last meeting, I said, we're going to leave like 7 days from now. He says, call me the day before. And then, sure enough, on that day, my wife, and at that time, our 2 kids came. My wife was pregnant with our third.
You know you got lucky.
I got very...
usually we'll tell you, call the secretary,
and then he's gone, right, that's exactly right. No, but he introduced us, and getting to spend time with him was like getting to spend time with Rashi. That's the only way I can describe it, is he was the Rashi, he was the greatest scholar of a generation, or of several generations, many generations of the Jewish people, and the way that he transformed, at that time, the center in Nachlaot there. I was talking about this in my office. You would have bachers come from yeshiva. You'd have fringe players like myself coming from the conservative yeshiva. You had soldiers coming straight from base. You had women show up from Tel Aviv with tattoos all over, and there were 2 sections. There was a very subtle aisle in the middle, and people, mostly men, sat on the right, women sat on the left. And if a woman didn't know and sat on the wrong side, or a man didn't know and sat on the wrong side, he always made a point of making sure that nobody made anybody feel bad. That this was a place where everyone was to be welcomed, no matter what walk of life. Everyone was walking in to try to become a more educated Jew. And in that way, his tolerance and welcoming, I think, has affected all of his students, anybody who ever encountered him.
Absolutely.
So let me read your official biography now before I start to cry. Okay, biography of Rabbi Meni Even Israel.
Biography, nice.
Yes, it's even printed on stationery, yes. Rabbi Meni Even Israel was appointed director of the Steinsaltz Center by his father, Rabbi Adin Even Israel Steinsaltz, in 2005. His mission has been to complete the translation of the Jewish canon, bringing to life his father's vision of let my people know. Under his leadership, the center has published significant works, including the Steinsaltz Talmud in Hebrew, English, and French, the Steinsaltz Bible, the complete works of Maimonides, and a new edition of the Tanya in collaboration with Koren Publishing. Rabbi Meni has established strategic partnerships with organizations like 929, Maimonides Daily, Safari, and Chabad.org, significantly enhancing the accessibility and reach of Jewish scholarship. He's also driven digital innovation in Jewish education through the development of the Steinsaltz Daily Study app and the Steinsaltz Portal, which provide comprehensive digital access to Rabbi Steinsaltz's teachings. Ordained in 1995 by the late Chief Rabbi of Israel, Harav Mordechai Eliyahu, Zichrono Livracha, Rabbi Meni previously served as the campus rabbi for Hillel International at SUNY Stony Brook and then the University of Maryland. Currently, he lives in Jerusalem with his wife, Liza, and their 4 children, continuing to advance Jewish education and scholarship through both traditional and digital mediums. Welcome, Rabbi Meni.
Thank you. Sounds very impressive.
So tell us a little bit about yourself before we talk about your dad. How did you grow up? You grew up in Jerusalem, the son of a celebrity rabbi.
So I grew up in Jerusalem.
Here, talking to...
Sure. I grew up in Jerusalem, and when I was about 8 or 9, I already realized that I am not like the other kids. I have my own issues personally, but I understood very, very clearly that my father is the famous rabbi, and I can do whatever I want in class. Now I'm going to be kicked out. It was actually phenomenal because some of the times I really didn't like to be in school, which I presume, as you can imagine, not all kids would like to be in school. But it couldn't do anything to me. It was very nice, actually. It was really enjoyable. My father was, when I was very young, my father was never home. He was traveling all the time. When he came home on Shabbat, we were the only family who did not have any guests. In Pesach, because you need to have a guest for the Seder, they had a guest. It was the same woman who came from France specifically to be with my mother. That's it. So that's kind of a house we grew up. I mentioned earlier, he pushed us all, more or less politely, to be the best we can. He didn't expect us to be other people. We really pushed that agenda. You can do whatever your talent is, you make it the best. I'm the one who have the most amount of imagination in the family. That was my role. So I had a lot of dreams and a lot of ideas. My brother is the smarter one. At least that's what he thinks. I grew up in Chorev, which is a modern Orthodox school. Then went to Chabad Yeshiva for too many years. What else I can tell you? Important things. I got married to my wife after, my wife is originally from here, from LA. They made Aliyah when she was 12. We dated. We met. Both my mother and my mother-in-law, both psychologists. So that was a connection. You understand that. I have a father who's a rabbi, my mother is a psychologist, and I'm a middle child. Many, many issues. Said my psychologist already showed her building that she built in Monaco. It says dedicated by many. But it's right. Yeah. Really, it was a very fascinating childhood. The man was, because he had a photographic memory, whenever he traveled and he came home, he used to describe his meetings. I don't remember he described meeting with no one, but the rabbi here, but that I met later. But it was very vivid. So when we were there in Shabbat, again, alone with no guests, we got the full impact of his experience. And he described it in details. But every time, the story started the same. I arrived in X city, doesn't matter which one, and the first thing I did was to go to the zoo. The zoo, always the zoo. He said, I always prefer animals on 4 legs than 2 legs. I'm quoting, that's not me. That was his favorite quote. And remember one day I asked him, one of the things my father was very known for, he smoked a pipe. I don't know if you ever saw a picture of him, always smoked a pipe. And I asked him, why did you smoke a pipe? He said, first of all, I like it. Secondly, when you used to speak in public in the good old days, you had to do something with your hands. Because the hands are always free. What do you do? So you have a pipe, you have something to do. You have to put in, put out. And the third reason is when you smoke a pipe, you have enough time to answer people questions. Because you have to take it in, take it out, you have to clean it. It doesn't give you time to think about the answer. Yeah, I don't have a pipe here.
So let's talk a little bit about your father's upbringing. Okay? So he didn't grow up as a rabbi. He wasn't expected, that was not an expected result in his life.
Absolutely not.
Tell us how he grew up and his famous story he would tell, he used to say this in front of the class, right? His parents told him, you can grow up to be an apicorus, you just can't be an ignoramus, right? You can, meaning to say you can learn Yiddishkeit, you can learn the Jewish tradition and not practice it, that's okay, but you cannot not learn the Jewish tradition, that's not okay. And so tell us a little about his upbringing and about your grandparents.
Sure, so my grandparents made Aliyah in 1926. My grandfather was the head of one of the heads, because apparently there were too many of them, of the Communist Party in a certain period of time. My grandmother was a seamstress. They were sent to the center of the city of Jerusalem. And my grandfather, because apparently making Aliyah in those times was not hard enough, he went to fight against Franco with the International Brigade in Spain. When I traveled with my father later, our joke was maybe we're going to Toledo and we'll find some cousins. We didn't find any cousins, but yeah, nobody came forward. When he grew up in a really regular secular upbringing for all walks of life, were in the house. My grandfather were very connected to the government then, in pre-government because he was born in 1937. It was very clear from a very young age that this man that they're growing is a genius. His IQ was just insane, and also he had on top of it. See, it's one problem when you're a genius. The other problem is when you have a photographic memory on top of it. So not just you remember everything. When he was about 12 or 13, we're not really sure yet because I heard at least 8 different variations of this story. His grandfather told him that he has to go learn Talmud. He asked my grandfather, why do I have to learn Talmud? We're not religious. And he said, in my family, which didn't last in my generation, but in my family, we have a lot of heretics, a lot of them. But no one is ignoramus. That's what the origin of the story. I think actually the story was a bit earlier because my father went to a regular, there were a few good schools in Jerusalem then. One was the gymnasium, and the other one was Ma'aleh. Ma'aleh was a bit more religious. Aleph Bet Yeshua went there. There's a whole list of people who went to that particular school. My father's famous story is that he graduated in 11th grade in 7th, 12th. The training that they had was a classical training, so his really first language or learning language was Latin. That will explain also the way he was very comfortable with languages because he understood the basis much more than we teach today. But one thing is he decided in 11th grade, was about to finish, to matriculate, that he will not open any book that is remotely connected to the subjects that he have to learn for the matriculation test, the Baguriot, the end of the year, the end of the 12th grade testing. So, when you talk about algebra, English, history, all the stuff, he knew everything. The problem was that one of the subjects was literature. And the only thing he knew about the book he has to write, 20 pages, 30 pages, was the title. So he took the title and he wrote a whole new story about the book. So when he got the grade back, the teacher noted in the bottom, it seems that you remotely read the book. However, it's a good work and you pass. Finished 11th grade, then he went to university immediately. I think it was very clear to him from a very young age that his horizon is not financial. His horizon is to really take this particular book, the Talmud, and make it accessible. His line that he taught us, and I think he really believed in, was that if the Bible is God talking to men, the Talmud is the response of men talking back to God. When he taught Talmud, which was actually rare, talking about later in life, it was actually rare. He was not teaching it. People think that he will teach it all the time. He used to look on the character in the Talmud, the Tanaim and Amoraim, like they're sitting with him. And when he talked about the position or the ideas and the concept, he used to bring them from the entire Talmud. For example, Abaye and Rava, which the perfect duo of the Talmud, have a very ancient debate about the rules of lost object. When one actually can pick the lost object and belongs to him. When is the technical term? The technical term is when a person gives up hope of finding the object. And these two gentlemen, two rabbis, are arguing when is that point. My father went out and explained their debate the way it's based on the entire Talmud. What was the background? For example, in this particular case, he says Abaye was an orphan. For him, any object was important, and you don't lose hope till you lose hope, which take a very long time. Rava, which is his corresponding partner, was the son of the Rosh HaGolah. He was the elite of the elite, creme de la creme. For him, losing an object, who cares? But he brought it up from throughout the Talmud. That's where we grew up. He never taught us. We actually almost never learned together. And when we did learn with him, was a really frustrating experience, especially Talmud, because he knew everything. The problem is that he knew everything else about any other topic, which was a nightmare. Again, but I survived. I think again, when I think about it, as I said, I was very clearly from a very young age that he's a different person. I believe that he did if I may quote J.K. Rowling, the greater good. He sacrificed us for the greater good. He was not, again, any way, shape, or form, was really kind, great man. Man, some people might debate that. But he was really, that's what he wanted. He wanted to do things for the greater good. And he was willing to sacrifice everything for it. For me, that was life. That was we grew up with.
So I'm just going to show the community what a Steinsaltz Talmud, what the genius of Rav Steinsaltz was, in case there are people here in the community that don't know. This is an edition of the Steinsaltz Talmud, right? And so what he did was he decided, just like Rashi had done generations before him, to make the whole Jewish canon of literature accessible to the Jewish people, right? He decided that he would take, this is Masechet Sukkah, this is the tractate about Sukkot, about Sukkah, right? And he would take, do you see, this is Rashi on the inside, and Rav Steinsaltz's commentary is on the outside, written in modern Hebrew. Okay, so his commentary runs on the side of the page, and to spend evenings with him meant that you learned that he spoke exactly like you read the commentary. So this isn't like an academic version of the way that Rav Steinsaltz spoke. He spoke exactly with these same idioms that you read in the text. We also had the experience. Somebody asked him, he taught us Chassidut, he taught us Hasidic traditions on Thursday nights. And somebody raised their hand one time and asked somebody new to the class, why don't you teach the Talmud? And he said, I already taught the Talmud. It's all written right here, you should just read it. So that was his response in class. So I don't know if that person ever came back. That's right. That's why it was debated. Sometimes there were kind moments, sometimes less kind. But it was he was that kind of person. And when you think about the breadth of the tradition, that he accepted the responsibility to translate into modern Hebrew, to make accessible. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's the size of the ocean.
It is, and it's funny because we actually finalized this project in Hebrew 2009. So normally, normal human beings, when they're finishing their life achievement, you work on a project for 45 years, okay, it's a life achievement. You go home, you go play with your grandkids, as described, didn't happen. It's funny because my sister actually thought my father will retire. I have no idea why did she think it, but it's a whole family debate. I knew that he's going to pick another project. So I came to him and said, okay, now what? And he's like, you suggest. I was looking like, me? Why would I suggest it? This is not the right person. He said, you suggest. I said, okay, I will suggest. So I went back to my drawing board, and I came up with the 6 major Jewish projects that which he did not do to that moment. One was Midrash, then was Bible, then was Mishnah, then it was Maimonides Yad Chazakah, which is the law book, and then was the Zohar. What am I saying? And Tanya was there, but an English Talmud. So I thought, again, humbly, that my father will pick one of those projects, and we last another 40 years. Why bother? Right, so first of all, he said to me, Midrash, I'm not touching. I already did this for Rav Kook edition in 1957. I never knew that this book exists till that moment, okay, 2009. Then he said, Zohar, I don't want to teach because it was never canonized. The edition we have of the Zohar, which is the holiest Kabbalistic text we really use, he said it's not canonized. But the rest we will do. So the man was sitting from that moment, 2009, every day and recorded a video class on the Bible. So there's 929 movies. They're not even short. You know, my father never had a problem speaking. So it's about between 30 minutes to an hour, every single chapter of the Bible, he made a commentary. He took his top students from his yeshiva and instructed them directly how to write, by his own style, the commentary on Maimonides Yad Chazakah. The Mishnah, he took all his commentary from the Talmud, and between the Talmud and Mishnah, there's a gap of 24 tractates, right? He took the time and recorded all the commentary for it, and he gave that particular position to my brother to do with the senior editor. My brother spent a decade of doing it. Then we did the Talmud in English. The original Talmud in English was published by Random House. Random House took a major bet on the success of that project, and they intended to only publish 4 tractates. It was never intended to be the entire thing. It was 20 volumes, and my father was extremely not happy with the product. Said the product has too much commentary. My father's system always was and always will be, I'm giving you a spoon to your soup bowl. I'm not feeding you. When there's too much information, that means you never learn. That was his main perspective on the way to teach things. So as of today, tomorrow, whatever it is, my father was and is the only Jewish commentator from beginning of time that translated and commentate everything into modern language, the entire Jewish canon, which is unbelievable. Even Rashi didn't do it.
And so just to give you a little flavor of the personality of what the class was like. So people would sit and people would show up, an hour before, half hour before to make sure you had your seats, your makom kavua, your set position. And then like 2 minutes before, his secretary would open the side door and walk out, okay? Yes, purple hair, yes. And there was a table set up with his chair. She would come out and place a cup of hot tea and a glass cup on a glass saucer, and she would place it in the middle of the table. That was like a 30-second warning that he was about to come out. And when the cup of tea was finished, that's when class was over. So if he drank the tea in 35 minutes, class lasted 35 minutes. If it took him an hour and a half that day, that's how long it lasts, an hour and a half. And then he would stand up, and then it would break into Mariv. Right, always. It would end with Mariv, and he would just stand and face there was like a library Aron Kodesh kind of thing in the back, and students would lead Mariv. And so sometimes I led Mariv. There were lots of people who led Mariv, and this was the routine every time. And then he would disappear into that private office. Door would close. You could knock on the door for as long as you want. That door was not opening until the following thing. That was it. So he was very regimented in his work, in his personal, and he was very regimented.
He was, but then when it come to, it was very fascinating because really he had rules and regulation for everything, but he has flexibility on his personal life. When actually somebody managed to get through that door, through that lovely secretary with the purple hair, her nickname is the Dragon. She scared me. She's still working for me, but she's still scared. And you went through, he will give you the time of your life. He will not kick you out after 50 minutes. She will come and knock on the door every 15 minutes, but he will give you the time. And he will go to the sometimes crazy length to help people. We had a story of a woman who her son was kidnapped or taken by the father. I'm not sure. It's a long story. He has nothing to do with him, not his student, and he went out of his way, I'm talking about for 3 years, to try to find, she was French, to find any French leadership in both France and in Toronto, and then also in Montreal and Geneva, to help the girl. In 3 years, I remember every week was an update. What do we know about this girl? Where she is? Where's the kid? He went out of his way, but also the flexibility of learning. My earliest child memory, for the sake of this conversation, is I have a terrible time sleeping. Long story. I don't know why, but I'm very hard time sleeping. Sleep about two hours straight and wake up like every good baby. You wake up 2 hours crying, but I usually sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. So I used to wake up. I used to go to sleep at 8, like a nice young man. Why go to sleep when you're 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade? My parents' house is like the Hobbit tunnel, very long. Okay, you have to start from the kid's bedroom on one side, then his living room, kitchenette, store, whatever it is, rooms, and then their room. My father used to sit in the middle and have a Talmud open. It was clearly a Talmud open on one side, his pipe in the middle, the famous pipe, and a science fiction book open close to it. The ability, his breaks, when he took breaks between the pipes and the Talmud, science fiction was his pet peeve. That's what he liked. He actually spent time reading it. I think throughout my life, forget about his life, I bought hundreds of science fiction books for him to read. And then there was the only thing he used to do. He used to go to the used bookstores by himself, refused to let the secretaries do that, and exchange the books. Now, the problem is that he never got any old books. He always got new books because you have a photographic memory, you don't have to repeat it again. So it was really a challenge. But he has other things that, even in the Talmud itself, I don't know if he's sure, he was one of the first people to institute pictures inside the Talmud. In our English edition, in the new books, it's all in color, but he really did it, and it was a breakthrough and controversial at that time, taking the Talmud, which is a sacred book, and, come on, there must be something here. It's not great, but.
Right. These are images of the etrog. You can see there's a conversation about etrogs. So you can see these hand sketches of different ideas of what a pitom looks like, what a pitom doesn't look like. But here you have a picture of
Evan Golal.
Right, a stone.
Rolling stone.
You have a picture of the Rolling Stone here, not the Mick Jagger edition, different kind of Rolling Stone.
Yeah. So it was but that was his ideas, and that was one of the first things he himself took care of. Make sure there's artists, make sure some of the drawing actually is his. Most likely actually this too, because they're very early. And the education we got was as open-minded. I mean, we all had to read, as I mentioned to someone, that when I was about 12, I did the terrible mistake. Terrible. I went to my father and I said, I'm bored. And as I'm saying the words, right, I was like, this is not going to end up well. And my father said, okay, you're bored? Not a problem. Here is a small book I want you to read. He brought me Ulysses, James Joyce. In English, I was 12. My English was terrible then. I spent a year almost reading it, and then I read it in Hebrew and English. I still don't get what the book wants. Not sure why it's such a big deal. I prefer Guinness instead. It's much better. But the other thing is that when I was very younger than this memory, my first grade report card. You have in first grade you get 2 report cards. The first report cards, all kids get the same. Meni is a great child, he is amazing, blah, blah, blah. It's such a joy to have him around, right? That's the first one. Then the second half of the year is like, Meni, it's a great pleasure to have around. However, he has a terrible time reading. It was first grade. My father got this as an insult. He actually treated it as a personal insult on his own self. And he spent every Friday night learning Chumash with me. We went through the Torah portion of the week every Friday night. It was not easy. It was not easy. And he was meticulous, and he wanted me to read it properly. And it doesn't matter. I would scream, cry, yell, whatever it is, and my mother was sitting there. Nothing. The man will not budge. Will not budge. You have to do all of it. So I get I think about 10, maybe 11 years old. I read fluently, I read whatever he gives me, I read everything. And I thought, now I'm reading the Chumash very well, right? I know to read it, there's no mistake done. I really know that book by heart now, but from the same reason. And he's like, okay, I'm free, right? We done. I can go over Friday night to play with my friends, right? That's when all the Israelis go to play. This is our basically day off. We don't have Sunday really, so Friday and Shabbat is the day off. I said, no, my son, now we're going to learn Rashi. Yeah. That took.
So your father traveled all around the world and met with everybody. Okay, so I remember at late in life before he passed, the Pope was coming to Israel, and the Pope requested a meeting with him. I don't know if that meeting ever happened or didn't happen, but that's okay. So who was your father? Who would he tell stories about meeting? Who was impressive to him that he had met over the course of his life? When he would look back and say, he couldn't believe that he had met with who?
My father never had this word. I can't believe that. He never had that vocabulary. I think the most the person who had the most amount of impact of him was the Lubavitcher Rebba, single-handedly. My father was serving as the president of Israel Shazar, rabbi, advisor, I'm not sure what the official term is. And I think his meeting with the Rebbe in 1971 was so tremendous on him. He didn't change his behavior, mind you. Whatever he accepted before. He didn't change anything. But I remember when I was talked about it later, when he talked to me about it, which he never shared any personal information, he said that he felt that the individual in front of him, he didn't use any superlative. He said the Rebbe actually had an open conversation, and you felt that he's with you. I don't know how to describe it more. It was very intimate. You felt the Rebbe actually, in a sense, was him. It's like he had an open conversation with himself. The funniest thing is that he made a decision after the first time he met the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he will never ask him anything physical. Not blessing for success, nothing. He said that was his decision. And you know what the Lubavitcher Rebbe did since then? Every time they met, the Lubavitcher Rebbe spoke to him only about physical things, just to make sure. So I think that was one guy. Actually, the meeting with the Pope, the story, I don't mean to correct you, but it's going around. The person with my father was the prime minister, later president of Italy, Andreotti. Andreotti was a guy who ended up in charges of mafia charges. This is the way he ends up. There's a long story about him, a very nice guy. He helped to open the first yeshiva in Russia. He was the one who actually made the introduction between my father and Khrushchev and later on others to make the first yeshiva in Russia before the walls went down. It was under the Russian academic, Russian science and mathematic division. Imagine that, the yeshiva was under the Russian academic centers. Unbelievable. But that's because the Italians. So when he came to Israel, to ask him, who do you want to meet? He said, I want to meet Rabbi Steinsaltz. And the government had no idea what to do with it. You can imagine, my parents did not live in the most secure of houses. It was a tunnel, but it was not secure enough. And they actually, I remember the phone calls, I remember the mess, but eventually done. But the last meeting we actually had together, we met with the Pope. So the advisory board of the magazine called, I don't remember, I think maybe La Curia, asked my father to write an article about the Pope as being the 4th year of his reign. My father said what he said the best. I never met the man. If you want me to write something about him, I'm more than happy to do so, but I'd like to meet him. So they arranged a meeting, and again, the bureaucracy, imagine Italian bureaucracy, Israeli bureaucracy, combined together. It's unbelievable. We got it. It took months of preparation. We're getting there. First of all, we're about to go to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Just an idea. It's a description, all the books, all the machzorim, all description about the way you approach the king. I'm not equating the Pope with a king, but every room you go, there's other staff. They have a different ranking. They have a different clothing. Everybody knows the position. It's amazing in that mindset. We're getting to the last room. We're meeting the Pope. Now, I was too junior then, and we were kicked out. All the non-essential staff were kicked out, and only my father and the Pope remained in the room. We spoke for about 35 minutes. Then we went back to our business. The rules is when you go as a Jew to meet the Pope, and if you are understanding your position as, really, you are the senior. The church is a junior, not a senior. So you always have to do something with the Jewish community before. Just to show that the respect is really, you don't go specifically to meet the Pope. You go to Jewish community, and additionally, you meet the Pope. But we did that. My father was very clear about it. It was very, very clear. We did whatever the Jewish community wanted. It's one of my favorite cities in the world, Rome. Recommend for everybody. If you go, fried artichoke. That's the way. With food you want to eat, the fried. But anyway, we're in the plane.
Fried artichoke and swing by the Vatican just to meet him on the way out.
In the way out, yeah, that's it. No, Vatican's a beautiful place. One of my favorite museums in the world. But anyway, we're going in the plane. It's me and my father. All the rest of the staff already left. Me and my father. And it's one of those old-fashioned, now it's new, but it was a walk. It was about maybe a kilometer, maybe a mile. It was very long. Maybe walking with him, and he walks a bit slow. And finally, we get to the plane. Plane take off. And I do with a question I'm dying to ask him. What did you speak to Pope about? Right? This is the question you have to ask. Father turned around to me and said, what two old men speak about? Women and food. So I turned around and I asked him, okay, I got this. That probably was one of the jokes. I said, really, what you meant? He said, again, it's seeing it earlier, he said, I feel a storm is coming. I feel a storm is coming. And we need to get as many cooperations, many partnerships as we can. And right now, the church is on our side. We have to have a real relationship with them. And he said to me, what really we spoke the Pope about, because the Pope is from Argentina, he said, I want us to stop dancing the cha-cha and start dancing together the tango. And it was supposed to be another meeting, and my father came home, say hi to my mother, spoke a little bit to the secretary, went back to work, and he was there for a few hours, wrote literally one of the last paragraphs on the Mishnah commentary. He came home and he received his stroke. That was that night.
So this will be the last story question, and then I'm happy to open it up for some questions. And then following that, Rabbi Meni brought some books, which are the new edition of the Steinsaltz Pirkei Avot translated into English. And if anybody would like to purchase it, the donations go to the Steinsaltz Center for $25 a copy. And so let me end with this question. When I went with my wife and our two kids to his office, I said to Rav Steinsaltz, I've never bought my parents a present from Israel my entire life. Please sign a Masechet for them. And he signed it for them. They have it in their house. He signed my Masechet. And then he turned to my daughter, my oldest daughter, and said, what do you like? And she was like silent in the meeting. She was totally silent. And so he says, do you like animals? She says, I like animals. So he drew her an elephant, a picture of an elephant, okay, and signed it for her, that she should have it, okay? So it's in my Talmud, the picture of the elephant that he drew for her. He had a way of connecting to every person that he met, every person that he encountered. He had a way of connecting to them. How do you imagine the Steinsaltz Center moving forward, carrying that spirit and teaching that spirit? Because it feels to me like one of the pieces of the world that's missing in his absence and in the absence of the Lebovitz Rebbe, in the absence of all of these great teachers, are teachers who connect with each and every person that walks into their office.
So first of all, it's a great question. I don't have a pipe. You see, that's really when you need the pipe. I don't have a pipe. I think the first important thing is to remember, really take it to heart. The word is in Pirkei Avot of Rabbi Akiva. Chaviv Adam shenimra b'tzelem. Every man is created in God's image. Once you take that point, that's the most important point in the world, because we have a place of equality, both the image of God. That's one. I think that was the first concept. They didn't judge you on color, shape, form, sexuality, nothing. None of this scared them. Stupidity, my father could not tolerate, and he will judge you severely about it. You can be a human being, but you're stupid. Please leave. It was not kind when he got, but that's something his own thing. I think that the biggest challenge, especially today, is to realize that we need to find every element what brings us together, any element of unity is what's important. And not only because of the rabid anti-Semitism or the war or even the hostages. What brings us together need to be our heritage, our relationship to each other. We need to do whatever we can to bring people together. Whatever you have to sacrifice for this, you have to do. And I think my father would do the same thing. Some of you even been here before. Father did not care about domination. He didn't care about who you are, what you are. everybody was accepted, and everybody was welcomed. I grew up in a house when having a priest, Shulamit Aloni, who was extreme left in Israel, and the extreme right sitting on the same couch, regular behavior in the house. But we actually grew up like this. When you come to my house for Shabbos, you've been there, you see everybody come from every walks of life. You have people right, left, center, Jews, non-Jews. It doesn't matter. You have to keep the door open. The way we do it, the way the Steinsaltz Center does, is with Jewish knowledge. It's not even about education. That will give the educators. We actually give you the tools to know. What are you going to do with this knowledge? It's completely up to you. As I said before, we'll give you the spoon, give you the soup, give the bowl. What are you going to do with it? It's really up to you. We emphasize that everybody should know their heritage. My father did not make commentary on all the books in the world. Probably he could have if he had the time. But the books that he chose to translate, the books, the canon, what he chose as a canon, the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Rambam, the Tanakh, and the Tanya, are the essential books that every person should read. And if you cannot read all of them, because there are a lot of books, we'll make sure you're going to have the best of. That's on us. You do that, you get farther. And I think that was also the common denominator of all those leaders. They saw us as humanity, as Jews, moving forward. We need to be together, whatever takes.
Why don't we open it up for a few questions? Is there any questions? I'll start with my dad. Go ahead.
Were you ever in the room with your father and the Lebovitz Rebba sat together? I was 3 years old. You were how old? 3. I'm sorry, I was 3 years old. And my main concern at that moment was that I felt very bad for the Lebovitz Rebba, that they give alcohol, give the l'chaim every Shabbat. So I forced my mother, I was about 3, to buy me a pack of those cups, and I gave it to my father. I gave it to the Rebbe. He took it. I'm sure he used it well. That's my memory of it. My father, people always ask me if I regret not asking my father any question. I don't. I ask him all the questions. He refused to answer. I had a meeting, about all these meeting with the Lebovitz Rebbe. I told him, I'm going to come to your room. The secretary approved my meeting. Unbelievable. I'm the CEO, and she approved my meeting to come and spoke to my father. We put 2 hours for it and asked him, okay, can you please tell me about all the time you met the Lebovitz Rebbe? My father said, no. End of conversation. And I still don't know. Yes.
Second question. When your father met with the Pope,
Yes.
he asked if we have any of our artifacts back.
See, that's the reason when you deal with a person like my father, you realize that my father knows that there's nothing there. Why? I'll explain. It's a 2 minutes historical lesson. We have, the last rumor we have about the remnants of the temple is about 2nd century. We know there was a temple called Temple of Peace. It's immediately when you go from the Colosseum, you go up. I forgot the name of there's a name of this in Rome. The Roman Forum. Thank you. Roman Forum. You go there. There's a place where this palace temple was, Temple of Peace. And over there, we know there was the drapes of the Holy of Holies. We know it was there. The menorah and the table. And however, that particular temple was destroyed with the inner fighting of the Roman emperors, 12 emperors, and it was burned completely. We have records of it by Ducius and others that saying there was nothing left. If that's not enough, and let's say you pretend that things survived this kind of terrible fire, Rome was sacked at least twice. The menorah, that is the most important relic that we all know that they had, is about 30 kilos of gold, about 60 pounds, more or less. Nobody keeps it in one piece. If there's something in the Vatican, which they had, is books. But the books we have is our books. So if somebody tomorrow morning, as I mentioned, the Talmud have 63 tractates in the Mishnah, and only 39 in the Talmud. So we're missing 24, let's say. It depends what you ask, but 24. And even if we find the missing one, which really don't exist, we're not going to accept them because there's no tradition. So the fact we don't have them, we don't have them. They have a lot of the first hand, first print, first whatever. They have a lot, and they have and they have money, and they have a gold, and they have art from here to the wazoo. A lot of the Nazi-related art is in the Vatican, but nothing important. That's the reason they didn't ask him. It was disappointing me the first time I went with him. Yeah.
I was surprised to hear about his passion for science fiction. Do you have a favorite author?
Sure. My cousin, Isaac Asimov.
You related to Isaac Asimov?
Yeah,
So
my mother is Asimov. Isaac was a third cousin. My father went to meet him in Russia, and he said I don't have time for second cousins. He died 2 weeks later. He really didn't have time. He did meet my aunt. Science fiction is the key. The fact that you can think a good science fiction, and by the way, again, I know I'm in California, it's dangerous. The best fantasy writer in science fiction is we'll call Hubbard, the guy who creates Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard. His book it's called The Battlefield Earth, is one of the best fantasy books ever written in this genre. I'm not recommending anything else. This is just that particular book. Yeah, my father was a big fan of science fiction.
Any other questions?
thank you for being here. I just
Pleasure.
want to get clear on something that I learned from Rabbi Gordon Chabad Benzino. He talked about your father. There was a particular verse in the Torah when, and I don't remember exactly where, but where your father met with the Lebovitz Rebbe, and the way I understood it, and that you had a brother who wasn't feeling well, and also.
It's all me. No, my brother felt great. I'm the one with.
And also, your dad was, I guess, being very involved with, writings and so on, that there might have been an influence of an evil eye on it, and that the Rebbe suggested he change his name.
Which we did.
With Evan, a rock.
Right.
Can you comment on that at all?
Sure. It's available online if you want to see it in your free time in YouTube. But the idea was that my father went through a series of struggles, political, religious, and so on and so forth. And when he went through the Rebbe stopped him and said, "So, the troubles are over?" And my father said, "No." He said, "I'm giving you a bracha that according to your suffering, the reward shall be as great." So my father commented the Rebbe back to the same line, "Maybe in the next world." And the Rebbe get completely upset and said to my father, "No, in this world. You need to have success and greatness in this world. The next world doesn't help." That was one. And then when my father left, the Rebbe called him back again. He said, "I think it would be a good idea that you will change your last name." It's not really clear why. The Rebbe is a Rebbe. That's one of the things, when you have a Rebbe, in that sense, you don't ask questions. And he doesn't usually, it's like my father, he doesn't answer you why. He's just tell you, do it. So he did it, changed the name, took 6 months. I was sick after this 6 months. So I'm really not sure if it was part of the Rebbe vision or he really wanted my father to have a different name. For me, it's great. I can go to places and talk about my father for half an hour, 45 minutes, using the name Meni Even Israel, and nobody knows I'm connected. It's perfect. It's absolutely great. But I don't go by Steinsaltz at all. Again, if you call me Steinsaltz, I will turn around. I'm not impolite. But the best story I have about that is I was over in the States as a Hillel rabbi, and I get a phone call from my father's top secretary. This is before Fruma, before the dragon. And the guy is calling me frantically. My father is supposed to go to a flight to Venice, in the Beniala of books. And he's the top speaker there and preparing for him. There's only one problem. The ticket says Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. The passport says Rabbi Adin Even Israel. And he's calling me. This is 2 o'clock in the morning in New York. I'm like, dude, what do you want me to do exactly? What is exactly my ability to convince anybody? Whatever. I told him the logical thing. Take a picture of the book, show them it's the same person, and buy a new ticket. Buy a new ticket. Take 4 minutes. He got there. But my father took it very seriously also. Individually, he used the name. My predecessor, CEO, came to the Lebovitz Rebbe crying. Said, "You're killing my business. If I'm going to change this Talmud from the Steinsaltz Talmud to the Even Israel Talmud, nobody ever buying anything." So the Lebovitz Rebbe said, "Fine, keep it on the books." So all the books have Steinsaltz on and Even Israel.
I want to thank Rabbi Meni for visiting us here at VBS. God willing, you'll come back to Los Angeles and you'll visit us again.
Actually have a daughter living here.
You have a daughter living here.
And all my in-laws, except, and some friends. But
You have in-laws and friends. That's right. That's how it goes in family. Please, we look forward to having you here. If everybody would like to stick around, buy a book, speak with Rabbi Meni, you're very welcome. And on behalf of all of us here at VBS, Shana Tova, may be a better year for you, your family, and for all of Klal Yisrael. Amen. Have a good evening, everybody.